sports, a bridge that brings people together. And here in the Commonwealth, it's no different. From the gridiron to the hardwood and beyond, we all have a team we love to talk about. Now for the teams you care about, here's Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice.
Good afternoon. Welcome into Heartland Sports Live. Thank you to all of those who were listening to the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers broadcast this afternoon with Randy Lee. As this is Heartland Sports Live, where we talk about all area sports, including 17th District boys and girls basketball this hour. As I have Mike Matheson of the News Enterprise joining us here on the show, and we're going to keep you for an extra segment today, Mike, and cover boys basketball, get on the girls' side here in just a little bit. But first of all, how was your holiday break?
It was good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. How was yours?
Uneventful for the most part. Still on the trek to losing weight. In fact, I'm actually going to write down my New Year's resolution this year to continue the path and where I'm going, and hopefully drop a few more this next year.
I know it's not easy.
No, it's not easy, but we're getting there. But let's talk about some area hoops action, and I guess I just got to start off with John Hardin.
Yep. Still
undefeated. A big win over Corbin over the weekend, a team who had went into that game with only one loss on the season. They win 67-66. In fact, I saw the tweet on the John Hardin basketball Twitter page. The kids fought through adversity, in which if you face a tough Corbin team, you have a close game like that. We saw that a year ago with this John Hardin team. They were in some tight situations. Here in the 17th District, they were in some tight ball games, but they kept finding ways to win throughout the regular season. Do you feel like this year's team has kind of a chip on their shoulder after what happened in the first round of the Sweet 16 last year?
100%. I 100% feel they have a chip on their shoulder because they don't want to go, they don't want to go 35-0 and then one and done in the Sweet 16. Look, their goal last year was a state championship, and they could have won the state championship because there was not one team that was drastically better than anybody else. I know Trinity won it with the kid that's now at Louisville, Dayton Johnson. But there was not one team that was head and shoulders above anybody last year, and everybody knew it. So when you went to the Sweet 16, I'm not saying all 16 teams had a chance to win because obviously some teams weren't going to win. But John was one of those teams that had a chance to win a state championship last year, and they knew it. And they didn't. And they lost another heartbreaker, and so now they've got a little chip on their shoulder because they want to go back to where they were. They want to go back to the Sweet 16, and they want to win ball games. And let's face it, from what everyone's seen right now, there's not one team that's drastically better than anybody else. Again, right? There's just right now there's not that team that everyone goes, yep, they're going to win. There's not. And I know there's some teams that are good. I agree with there's some really good basketball teams, but there's not that team that everyone goes, yeah, they're going to win this thing. So I do think John has a big chip on their shoulder, and they carry it amongst themselves because of what happened last year. And it's not, and they dropped another heartbreaker, and it was a Sweet 16. And, now guys like Alex and Preston and Trayvon, those three seniors, they've gone back to back Sweet 16s and lost two heartbreakers in a completely different fashion. Triple overtime and then a one-pointer. So, they're that much better, that much more experienced, and they want to prove something.
You mentioned something that I find fascinating, especially in the sports world. You mentioned that there isn't one team that you can pinpoint that's going to be our champion this year. Unlike football, where you can pretty much highlight two or three teams who are going to have very strong seasons and they're going to be basically in the thick of things when it's all said and done. Basketball is a completely different story because all it takes is one bad night of shooting and you could be done.
Right.
Look at John Hardin last year in the boys' Sweet 16 tournament, and then this year they've gotten off to a strong start, but it could be for Coach McCurry and in that team. They're just one bad shooting night away from having that happen again a year ago, and that's what I like about basketball is the unknown is much more present. No, it's in the game of basketball much more than football, where you pretty much know they have 11 guys who straight up are going to beat you.
Right. You look at the UK Louisville game on Saturday. Louisville goes 9 of 20 from the free throw line. They should have won the ball game. You could talk about referees, and the technical call on Calipari was complete garbage. But bottom line, Louisville was 9 for 20 from the free throw line. 9 of 20. UK was 21 of 25, 84%. So how do you win that ball game? Because you can't make free throws. The other team did. You can have that night. You could have that night in the 17 district semifinals where you can't hit a shot, and it's just not a good night. And all of a sudden, you don't go to the next. You don't go to the next round, right? You don't go to the 17 district championship game, which gets you to the fifth region. And the fifth region means you have a chance to get to the Sweet 16. So yeah, you're right. It's it's why you play the game. And last night, John held on because they got outscored in the fourth quarter. So not only did they beat Corbin by one, they beat Corbin by one and got outscored in the fourth quarter and did not shoot free throws well in the fourth quarter at all, which was their Achilles heel last year. But they won, and I still say another reason why they won is because you've got the big three who've been in all these tight games. I don't think they get rattled. I don't think they panic. I think they're pretty bunch of level-headed kids. And then you have, as a point guard, Devin Rogers, who played a lot of serious minutes last year as a freshman. And you got Tay Stone in there who can harass anybody with the best of them defensively. So John gets a nice win over Corbin. They have to play again today, and, we'll see what happens. But, you have to like what John Hardin does in close games. Not saying they're going to win them all, right? Even though they did last year until the Sweet 16. But you have to like the fact that they can run sets. And yeah, there's a good chance Alex Matthews is getting the ball. But, Preston Morell is shooting, 67% from the floor. Trayvon Harris is shooting 62% from the floor. Preston Murrell's top 10 in the state in field goal percentage.
Well, John Hardin overall has been shooting at least 50% in every single game. I don't know what their statistics were over the last couple of games, but John Hardin will play Clay County tonight. Clay County 8-3 on the season out of the 13th region. So
another good show.
They're second overall in their region, in fact. So another big showing tonight, possibly from John Hardin, as they will look to try to keep on track. Another undefeated team in our area, as you know, Elizabethtown. I don't know if they're necessarily surprising us because we knew how much experience this team had together on the floor with one another, but they have been...
They're good.
Their defense has been lights out.
They're good. They're good. And there's a lot of reasons why they're good. First of all, is Coach Herrick can flat coach. Been around a long time, can coach. Kids listen to him. Second reason why they're really good is because they have a lot of very good players, but they've been playing together forever. They've been playing together since they were 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. It's like they know where everyone's going to be. Those guys have been playing together. The twins, Jaquias, Miles Fields, Camden Williams, Jacob Moberly, Alondre Peanut, Alondre Murray. You just go down the line. They've been playing together for a really long time.
And a lot of these kids are still juniors, by the way.
Exactly. And so last season when they went, I think, 13 and 15, so they went 28 games. It was like a 28-game dress rehearsal. Because they only lost Noah Peeler off last year's team. They get Clay Games back, who missed all last year with a shoulder injury. And so now they're just that much better because they return 98% of their offense and they bring back Clay off the bench, who's a 6'4", 6'5" kid who can do a lot of really good things. But the fact that, and you can see in the fact that the Sherrard twins and Jaquias didn't play football, so they spent the fall in the weight room playing basketball, working on their skills, getting better, and you can see it. It's a visible. This is not an intangible they have. You can see it. You can see the Sherrard twins are bigger, faster, stronger. They don't get bumped off the ball as much when they dribble. They don't get bumped off the ball as much when they're playing defense. They get in your dish, and you can tell. You can just tell, right? Miles Fields he's shooting 69% from the floor. I
think he's really underrated.
He's very underrated. I think Miles Fields can flat play. I mean, yeah, he has some limitations like every ball player, but he's shooting 69% from the floor. Hello. I mean, and Jaquias will dish, drive, kick, dish to Miles, dish to Camden, dish to whomever. And they're just they're very good in transition. Yeah, they're sloppy at times because that's what transition does to you. Because if you're a fast-paced team, everything you go through one of those nights where, you kick a few balls away that you're not supposed to have, and you miss a few easy shots and that type of stuff. But the bottom line is they're 7-0. They're not in the top 10, and they're not in the state stats leaders yet because you have to have a minimum 8 games played, and they've only played 7.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in the stats leader right now. But still, they're. I watched them against PRP Friday night. DuPont Manual Friday night, and they had their problems, but they got it together in the fourth quarter. Played some really good basketball. They can run sets. They do a very good job offensively against a team playing man against them. They did a very nice job defensively against DuPont Manual in the second half, specifically in the fourth quarter. They didn't, and they're just good. They press like John. They press like John does. It's just a different type of press. They don't have Alex at 6'5", 6'6" Alex Matthews on the point of a diamond. They just do different things, and they're good. They're just good. They're fun to watch, and they're good.
Yeah, so they win 84-74 against PRP over the weekend. Now they'll play DeSales in January, Owensboro, and then Fort Knox. I'm telling you, I can't wait for that first meeting between Elizabethtown and John Hardin. I think that's going to be one of the best games of the season.
It's going to be packed. I know that. I remember last year when the first game of the Central E-Town boys, it was at Charlie Rollins Memorial Gymnasium, and the place was loaded, and it was loud. It was fun. It was fun.
Last year.
No, it was two student sections being loud. It was just fun. That game, John E-Town, game 1, is going to be fun. It's going to be loud. It's going to be hot in that gym. It's going to be packed, and it's going to be fun. And that's the type of game you want to be in, man. Those are the type of games you want to play. And obviously, they have a few games before they get there. And, it's not going to play till, January 21st, I think it is? Something along those lines?
Yeah.
January 21.
Yep.
So, and it's going to be at E-Town, the first game. And the second game, I think, is February 4th. And, obviously, each team has a lot of games to go to but that's just going to be a fun game. Last year's game at E-Town, when E-Town was a sub-500 team, John won by 2. I was at that game. That was, shoo.
I don't want to put pressure on these two teams. Could you imagine if both of those two teams are still, for some reason, undefeated up until that point?
How much fun would that? I mean, obviously they have a lot of games to play, and they still play some very good talent. They're still on the schedule. But, it's just going to be a great high school basketball atmosphere, period. Because they both can score, they both can play defense, and they both can play defense really well. That's the thing I think people are not seeing yet about the E-Town boys yet. They can flat play defense.
I think that's their best. As good as they are shooting wise, in some games, I think their defense is still stronger than their offense.
I do, and both teams are very good in transition. Right now, I just really think the little bit of advantage that John has over E-Town is rebounding. I mean, John's the number 1 team in the state in rebounding. The number 1 team in the state. They average 42 boards.
And Alex Matthews probably has half of those.
So
getting his double-double every night.
Yeah, Alex is 5th in the state at 11.1 a game in rebounds. Trayvon's averaging 8.9 a game. So there's 20 rebounds a game right there. And so obviously if you're going to beat John, you got to keep those guys off the offensive board. You just have to, and it's not easy. It's just that's a must, and that's not an easy thing to do.
All right, Mike Matheson of the News Enterprise here on Heartland Sports Live, where we've been talking about the positives. Let's wrap up the boys' side here in the 17th district. Let's talk about the negatives right now. North Central, Fort Knox, all struggling here in the month of December. What do North and Central need to do to improve come January? Like what do you see most that they need to improve on out of those two teams?
I think Central has to be on the offensive end. They can't be so offensively inefficient sometimes. I think their defense is fine. Look, defense is all effort, but I think sometimes Central gets in trouble offensively sometimes. Obviously, last year they could have gone to Jacob. Well, they don't have that this year. And so you've got to figure out a way between Gavin and Chase and Dianco. And Chase is just back. He was out for, 3, 4, 5 games because of the ankle. Sean Hay is now back. That's going to help them. 6'5" is 6'5". And so he can get you 8 and 8 every night, which is going to help them. So I just think I think they'll be fine. Coach Nickel told me the other night when they got beat that they played a pretty solid game. They just happened to get beat while they were in Tennessee. They had a 4-point third quarter, which got them beat, was it 51-44? They had a 4-point third quarter. And it was a 2-point game at halftime. So look, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be a much better team in the second half of the season. I think North's going to be a much better team in the second half of the season. North just has to, I think some of the football players are still getting in basketball shape because that's not an easy transition.
No, it's not. And
so you got Jalen Sharps and Josh and Josh Moore, and you have those guys who they just need to get in Quayshawn Davis, they just need to get in basketball shape. And it takes time. It takes time to get your legs in basketball shape. It takes time to get your lungs in basketball shape. It just takes time. And I think North will be fine. I think they'll be a much better team in the second half of the season. Sometimes they're offensively inefficient also. They need, and obviously their best player is Nasir Johnson, who can flat play. Nasir Johnson is good. You just need some help every once in a while, and they need to be able to they need to be able to stop the other team when needed, and then come down and run a good offensive set, be a little bit better in transition. And I think, they've lost 5 in a row, but I think they'll be fine. They just have to be better. Both teams have to be better on the offensive end.
My biggest thing for both those two teams is Central needs to figure out who they are offensively. It seems like there's been way too many times where they've been miscommunicating, and then they're going down the other end of the floor when the ball goes out of bounds, like saying, "Hey, you need to pass it here instead of behind me. You need to anticipate where I'm going." It seems like there's been way too many miscommunications offensively. Just watching the body language and how the players react to each other after a bad play. And then for North Hardin, they gotta capitalize on every situation on the offensive side. It seems like they've had plenty of opportunities. The ball just isn't necessarily dropping through the hole at times. And so I think that's the biggest thing here heading into January for those two teams is they need to just get things going on the offensive side, because I think they're fine on the defensive.
I do too. I think they're fine. Obviously, defense is all effort. It's just Central needs to learn how to play with the group they have now, and I think Chase being out a little bit kind of helped them because the younger guards had to get some playing time. And under stressful situations like playing against John, that's not easy to do. And like I said, I just think they'll be better in the second half of the season. Then I think they'll be fine.
He's Mike Matheson. I'm Trevor Rice, and we're going to keep him around for one more segment. We're going to talk girls 17th District basketball right after this. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio. And welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we're live streaming this afternoon on ESPN Radio 1061.com. I still have Mike Matheson of the News Enterprise Sports Team joining me here on the show, talking 17th District boys and girls basketball. Now let's get to the girls' side of things, where Elizabethtown, here in this area anyway, still the front runner. They're 9-2 overall at this point, recently coming off of a couple of victories, as they've been in Charleston, South Carolina here recently, as they picked up a couple of wins over Westport out of Florida, 64-51. They beat Somerville 48-37. And I know their starting five is arguably one of the better ones in the state. You've gotten to see this team, I'm sure, a little bit here, Mike. What is the story with this year's E-Town team compared to their previous handful of seasons?
Well, this D-Town team is, I feel, drastically different in many ways. Number one, they've had multiple injuries, which has not helped them. Kira Dornan's out for the season with a torn ACL. Presley Payne's out for the season with a torn ACL. Whitney Hay is now currently out with an injury she suffered against Barron County. She'll be back, but she's out. So, which means other people have had to step up. You have Kayra Freeman, who's now transferred from John last year, who's now playing on a full-time basis. Her and Ellie Taylor are sharing the point guard spot, which I think makes them a much better team. But with Witt out now, and you've got to find different people to score, right? Because Whitney's 22 a game, 23 a game, 24 a game, whatever she is no longer there, which means now you have to find different ways to score. And one of the ways they found to score recently is Zabi Smalley. In the last 7 games, she has 100 points and 75 rebounds. She's had 4 double-doubles. Today she had 10 and 12 this morning. The other day she had 20 and 12. A couple weeks ago she had 19 and 16. She had 22 and 8. She had 14 and 17. So the same person who barely saw minutes at the beginning of last season because she was an 8th grader, learning, and the same kid who got major minutes at the end of last season has now, in the last 7 games, scored 100 points and grabbed 75 rebounds.
Which I think that's the thing that, we forget about her, is why she's not getting the minutes is because she's only a freshman.
She's only a freshman. But now, with Witt out, you got to find other scoring. So let's find the 6'2 freshman who can run the floor. And you have Ellie and Kara. Ellie is number 18 in the state at average. She's shooting 82.9% from the free throw line. Way better than a year ago. And she told me, she goes, I changed my attitude, she changed her mindset about free throws, and she's shooting 83% from the line. Today she was 6 for 6, so that's even a little bit better. So Ellie, she has now brought a different dynamic to the team. Kara's brought a different. I don't know if anybody has any faster hands than Ellie and Kara. Same thing with Witt. I mean, their hands when they play defense are just sick. They can get their hands on a ton of deflections. So what Coach Sweeney's had to do is had to figure out a way. Okay, so how's Rakia now going to score? Who's going to come off the bench? Kenzie Franklin, Livia Yerkeson. Where are we going to get these points from? Sydney Clarkson, foul trouble. Where are we going to get points from? And how are we going to do this? So I think their point production has gone down a little bit. Like today, they outscored Summerville 14-3 in the fourth quarter. They gave up 3 points. You give up 3 points in the tight ball game in the fourth quarter. You're winning that game every single time. So let's play defense. So the defense has to be a little bit better, and their defense is a little bit better. So they're just being a much different team than they were a year ago. Because pretty much once Lakin came back, Lakin missed most of last year. Once she came back, they were a better team. Now they're just a different team. So when now Witt comes back, you have all these players with all this extra time, all this extra practice, all this extra reps. So now Witt steps back into the starting lineup, and they're that much of a better team. Because Zavi's going nuts, and because Ellie's making free throws, because Kara is just driving and dishing, and because Rakia is going for 11-6 or 11-7. And because of all those things, and because Sydney's going for 8-10 or 9-12 or 10-11 or whatever that is, they're just different. They're still really good. They're just a different team. And I think right now they're still finding their footing, but they're finding their footing against some really good ball club. I mean, they lost to Simon Kenton. Simon Kenton's good. They lost to Cincinnati Walnut Hills. Cincinnati Walnut Hills is one of the best teams in the state of Ohio, period, in any classification. So they lost to 2 really good teams. And they played some good teams in South Carolina. Now they're coming back and, getting ready for 17 district action. And, they get knocks, and then they got to play Central and North. And so let's see if Witt is still out. Let's see what happens against Central and North.
And Central tested Elizabethtown last year. I remember that game over in Cecilia.
Central tested Bethlehem 2-3 days ago. They lost by 12, right? And Bethlehem's good.
Yeah, right now, they're at the top with E-Town. They're 11-2 so far on the season, 6-0 in region play.
We know how good Bethlehem is. We know how good E-Town is. And Central is 5-5, but they've averaged 65 points a game in the last 4 games. But look, E-Town's still the team to beat. I mean, we're all agreed upon that, because Kara Freeman and Ellie Taylor are outstanding at the point guard position, and Coach Sweeney can switch either one of them, and they'd be fine, because they both pass the ball really well. They both have very good eyes. They both have very good hands. They both love to pass the ball.
Another team that's really improving from a year ago, North Hardin. How about those Lady Trojans here recently? They're 10-3 so far on the season. They've been stronger on the defensive side of the ball. Some nights the ball hasn't necessarily been falling through the hole, but the defense has been keeping them in a lot of these games, and why they're winning so much.
I agree, and people can talk about offense all they want. It's still defense. And I think, this is the 3rd year under Coach Hooper. Everyone in the program now knows what Coach Hooper wants. She now understands her team really well. The team understands her really well. And, they're off to a really, really, really good start. Addison Sutton and Des Bryant and See, that's the one thing that Coach Hooper told me early in the season. Her freshmen in Ella Shear and Des Bryant, they're 3-year freshmen. They've been playing since they were in 7th grade. So they're freshmen, but they're not really freshmen.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I've talked to them both, and I talked to Des after one of the games, and she knows what she needs to do, and she's working on getting better in certain positions, and Ella's still a really good 3-point shooter, but you're right, their defense is way better than it used to be. And what's really helping them is they're getting their inside play with Zariah Rupp and Kiki Woods and I'm drawing a blank on the other girl, Wimberly. But they're
Tempers.
Yeah, Temperance. She comes in off the bench and she does a very nice job inside. And she does so they're getting inside scoring and they're getting inside defense, where last year they weren't really getting it in the way they're getting it now. And that's helping them a lot, because now they have an inside presence and they're getting I don't know, 14, 16, 18 points, 10, 12, 14 rebounds a game from those three combined, and sometimes more. And so now all of a sudden they have a dimension to their game that they really didn't have a year ago, and they sure didn't have 2 years ago when Coach Super took over. But now they have that dimension, and it's a great dimension. So now, if the other team wants to make sure Addison Sutton doesn't start burying threes and wants to get a little closer on her, now they've got the ball. Now they can kick the ball inside to any one of the three girls, and they can try to make some moves in there. And then if they start working inside, then they can kick it back out to Addie outside or kick it back out to, and then Jada Gregory, I think, is doing a really good job at point. I think she's a much smarter ball player. She's not getting as much foul trouble. She's picking her time, and I just think overall they're a really good ball club.
If you had to give an award for effort, Jada Gregory earns that every single game. She's on the floor as much as she is on her feet.
Agreed.
Her style of play, as aggressive as she is, one would be surprised that she's not in foul trouble ever. It seems like this season so far, which is amazing to me, considering how aggressive she is, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
That's why I think she's gotten smarter. I think she's still aggressive, but she's aggressively smarter. She's smarter. And one of the things Coach Hooper told me was that in addition to that smarts, that's carried over on the defensive end to where I don't really need to go for every steal now, because if I try to go for that steal and I knock her over, that's a foul. So she's going to get the ball, so let's let her get the ball and play defense. So instead of putting yourself in a position to have a foul called on her, she's now playing, okay, I can't get that ball, so I'm going to back off and let her get and play defense. So now instead of getting her second foul or third foul, it's still her first or second. And I think that's where North Hardin's a little bit smarter also. I think also a little bit smarter offensively, where they aren't always going to the basket on every break. They're realizing the numbers aren't always there. Okay, let's pull it out, run a set, and see what happens. And I think that's also where they're smarter, is they're not forcing so many shots as they have in the past. They're realizing, okay, numbers aren't there. Let's kick it out and let's see what happens. And I just think that's where they're just a much better team than they have been in the past.
We have Mike Matheson of the News Enterprise joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Let's go to Central Hardin now. And they rattled off 4 wins there in a row, lost recently to Bethlehem. You mentioned giving them a tough test. It seems like it took a little bit, but Coach Covington Jones's team is starting to find their footing a little bit. You're starting to see a Central Hardin team that we thought we would see in the first couple of games of this season, which they did win their opener, but then they went four games there in a row where they lost. It seems like now that, we've had a few games under our belt, the team is starting to click, and they're putting a much better product on the floor.
I agree. I think one of the things not that anyone likes a 4-game losing streak, but I think the 4-game losing streak in the long run helped them. Because maybe Coach Jones, Coach walked into the gym and go, okay, you're not all that. We just can't walk on the floor and expect to win. We have to do things correctly. When I watched them beat Mail to stop the 4-game losing streak, she goes, that's the way basketball should be played. We were sloppy at times, yes. We made mistakes at times, yes. We did some not smart things at times, yes. But that's how we need to play basketball. And since then, They're averaging 67, 68 a game. Let's face it, you're averaging 67, 68 a game. You're in line to win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, you are.
And the 3 games, and during that 4-game losing streak, the last 3 games of the 4 games, they were averaging 40 a game. So if you average 40 a game, it's hard to win.
In which they were leading until the final seconds over North Hardin, until North Hardin beat them with a couple of free throws there at the end of that one.
Right.
So that could have very easily been a 5-game winning streak, in which I'm excited to see that rematch too. Central and North later coming up here. I think they're playing in January, right? They're playing. Maybe they don't play until later on. Whenever they play, I'd have to find it real quick. Yeah, January 27th is when they play. So that's going to be a fun rematch too between those two teams. I think now that Central is starting to find their footing, and you could make the argument that John Hardin is playing better basketball than they were a season ago. Now, are they?
That's not even an argument. That's fact.
Are they where they want to be right now? No, they're not. But
look, Coach Nikki Coleman is doing a great job with them. Period. Considering what she took over and where they are now, considering the day after she took over to where they are now, it's light years from then to now. Light years, and it's going to be light years from now until February 1st again, because where they are now compared to where I think they'll be February 1st is going to be light years again, because they're doing things that they couldn't do a year ago, point blank couldn't do. And, I know Coach Coleman sat down with all the players. Okay, here's what I think we need to do, and here's how I think we need to be, and here's where I think we need to go. And now they're all buying in because they've seen success. They've seen a couple wins. They've had a couple really close losses, but they've seen some wins, and they realize, okay, this is working. And as you know with teenagers, man, they just want to see success.
Yeah.
They just want to see the fact that all this hard work is going to pay off at some point in time. It doesn't have to always pay off with every single win, but it has to pay off at some point in time. That's what they need to see, and that's what John has been able to see. Now, they played Southwestern the other night, which was the runner-up in the state championship game a year ago, and Southwestern's really good, and they got beat. But still, you can take something from that game and realize, okay, this is how we need to get better, and see them. That was last year's state runner-up. So, to see how they play defense, see what they did, and so now they played better the second game, and when they played the other night, now they get to go. Now they play Breck coming back, and Breck's a very good ball club. Breck has one of the best point guards in the state.
Yeah, if you're a player, you want to play the best teams.
Exactly. So you've got senior leadership, and you have young players coming up that are really good. Sharon Tidwell and Jaden Young, and you got the senior leadership and Mackenzie Graves and Brooke Graham, and you've had some injuries and you've had some things you had to fight through, but you're still fighting through it, and you're still doing these things, and they are so far ahead of where they were a year ago. It's not even funny. And Brooke Graham has the green light to pretty much pull the trigger at any point in time. Because and everyone knows she can get hot at any point in time as a 3-point shooter, and you have to respect her abilities to hit a 3 from pretty much anywhere. And so now she has a green light to pull the trigger, and when that trigger gets pulled and she starts banging down a couple threes, and that opens up the inside for what they want to do inside, and they're just a much better ball club.
I think the biggest thing for this group of girls on this John Hardin team is they just need consistency at the coaching position. I think they've dealt with way too many different people, and I think Coach Coleman is going to be that person for them moving forward. I think you can compare it to what Whitney Hooper dealt with up there at North Hardin.
Yeah,
it could be that very same transition where you get this is the period where the players and the coach are getting to know each other. Seems like things are heading in the right direction. Now let's get some more experience and start to put a couple of wins together. And confidence is the biggest thing when it comes to sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, and I think that's where Central got with the 4-game winning streak. They realized, okay, we can play basketball the way Coach wants us to play basketball. We're still going to make mistakes. We're still going to, be sloppy every once in a while, because when you play that fast-paced tempo, you're going to be sloppy. I don't care who it is, what level you're going to be sloppy. And I think John is now at the point where they realize, okay, let's follow what Coach wants us to do. We still have some, deficiencies. Obviously, we still need to get better, but they're way better than they used to be. They're way better than they were last year. They're way better than they were at the beginning of the season, and you can tell that that they're listening to Coach Coleman, listening to the coaching staff, and they're gaining success. And the more and more kids gain confidence, I don't care what level, the more and more the kids gain confidence, the better they play. And that's where, playing helps over and over and over. And I think that's where John is. I think that's where Central is. I think that's where North is. And E-Town, even with the strange lineup they have now, I think that's where they are too. They're realizing that they've got some, they've gained confidence. I really think E-Town has gained confidence during this time because Zabi's gone to double-double in the past 7 games, and Ellie's making every free throw. It's just and Kayra is a defensive. She just makes life hard on you defensively, and so every team now is just slowly understanding what they can and cannot do and trying to fine tune it over the past 2/3 of the season.
He's Mike Matheson of the News Enterprise. Mike, how can people find out more about you guys?
We are on Twitter at @TheAnySports. Myself and Matt Tyson. We, obviously pretty quiet this time of year right now, but everything starts again effective Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and we won't be at every single game because there's only 2 of us, but we'll be at a lot of games. That's for darn sure.
And I'm sure we'll see you at a couple of those. Mike Matheson there of the News Enterprise. Happy New Year to you.
You too.
I guess
Shorts weather.
The old joke. I'll see you next year.
We'll see you next year. Thanks, Trevor.
It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio. We'll come up and wrap the show right after this.
This is Rick Walters with the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame, and you're listening to Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio.
And welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we are live streaming this afternoon on ESPN Radio 1061.com. I want to thank Mike Matheson for joining me for a good chunk of the show, talking 17th District boys and girls basketball this hour as we look forward to the month of January and what all the teams are going to do. And then before you know it, we're going to be talking 17th District tournament play and the 5th region tournaments, which will carry both tournaments, boys and girls, all the way through March. So be listening out for that, and give me a follow on Twitter at Radio Trevor Rice to keep up to date with where I will be, and also give us a follow on our ESPN Twitter page as well, which is at ESPN Radio 1061. So go ahead and follow both of those, and you will keep up to date with where I will be, what games we're going to be calling, and what you can expect score-wise each and every basketball tournament game, boys and girls, coming up. And it'll be here before you know it. Like I said, January basketball, we've got a lot of good games, so you want to keep it locked on 106.1 ESPN Radio. Some other things we got to talk about right now, NFL playoffs. That's some big news right now, right? The Tennessee Titans ended up winning yesterday. Not just winning, really dominating, especially in the second half against the Houston Texans. It was 14-7 at halftime for Tennessee. Then they just took over in that second half, had 21 points, 14 in the fourth quarter, and ended up winning 35-14 overall, securing a playoff spot, 9-7. I'll go back to last week. You hire Mike Vrabel to improve on that. You still make the postseason, but are you satisfied if you're Tennessee? I guess you're somewhat happy if you're the fan base. You make it into the postseason. The thing that sucks about that, though, is with the Patriots losing, now you get to take on New England at New England. That's going to be a tough challenge coming up this weekend. We'll talk about the matchups here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and look at the stats from yesterday as Ryan Tannehill went 13 of 20 through the air, just shy of 200 yards, had 198, 2 touchdowns yesterday, as Marcus Mariota actually had 1 pass in there as well. He went 1 of 1 for 24. Derrick Henry had 32 carries. Yes, 32 carries. They lean on him quite a bit. 211 yards. Man, I wish I would have had him on my fantasy football team. 3 touchdowns as well, as Tennessee just dominated the game there. Like I said, in the second half, A.J. Brown through the air had 4 catches for 124 yards, 1 touchdown yesterday. That's an average of 31 yards per catch. That's a huge. Corey Davis had 4 catches as well for 44 yards. You really thought he was going to be the the big time receiver on this Titans team. Unfortunately, he's kind of fallen to that second or third best receiver this season, but A.J. Brown has just been taking over. As Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown, for whatever reason, just have a really, really strong connection this year. A.J. McCarron for the Texans went 21 of 36, had 225 yards, 1 interception yesterday. As Tawan Jones had 9 carries for 40 yards. A.J. McCarron, 5 carries yesterday for 39 yards and a touchdown. As it was just a struggle for the Texans at 10-6. They really had nothing to lose there because obviously they weren't going to improve their stock in the playoffs or the seed, I should say. And so they just rested a bunch of players, and much like the Bills did yesterday, and surprisingly the Patriots did not, but could Father Time be playing with Tom Brady? I don't know. We're gonna see. I mean, the postseason's here. That's when the Patriots typically show up. So, Tennessee, that's next on the radar for the Titans. They take on the New England Patriots. Yeah, it's going to be a tough challenge. Let's go ahead and look at that schedule real quick. As the Titans and Patriots will play each other at 8:15 this Saturday. It's going to be a tough one for Tennessee. Remember that game a couple of seasons ago? They were on the road. They gave the Patriots a pretty good battle, but it was the Patriots surviving that one. And now we'll just have to see if, Ryan Tannehill can lead the Titans into the glory land. And you would have to expect that this is going to be a tight game. I would expect Mike Vrabel. You remember this game last year in Nashville? These two teams collided. Mike Vrabel had the perfect plan, completely shut down that offense. Now, granted, they were without their tight end, the Patriots were. They didn't have Rob Gronkowski out on the field. But they just didn't look fluid on offense. The Patriots didn't. The defense came and showed up, basically punched Tom Brady and the Patriots offense in the mouth. And we're going to see if Mike Vrabel, who understands that system. I mean, he was once a part of it. He was once a linebacker for Bill Belichick. So we're going to see if he brings in a plan. Obviously, you feel like Tennessee has a chance in this one just for the fact that Mike Vrabel is familiar with the guy leading the other team, and Bill Belichick. Can they do it on the road, though, is going to be the top question. And can Ryan Tannehill be that guy? This is Ryan Tannehill's time to shine right now. He wins this game, I feel like he locks up a quarterback, his starting quarterback position moving forward with this franchise, if he hasn't already. I mean, you could easily say Ryan Tannehill, who took over a losing team, came back and has helped this team week in and week out. You could easily say that this team is so much better with Ryan Tannehill as where they were with Marcus Mariota at the start of the season. That's why it's Tannehill's team, I think, moving forward, regardless of what happens in this game. Even though if they do win, Ryan Tannehill, let's just say, is going to be a hero without a cape in Nashville. Other games going on this weekend in the wild card round, the Buffalo Bills and the Texans, who both rested their quarterbacks and a few players from their rosters in preparation for this game. Buffalo on the road taking on Houston at 4:35 this Saturday afternoon. That's going to be an interesting matchup. I feel like that the Buffalo Bills defense, if they can get to Deshaun Watson and rattle his cage a little bit, I think the Bills obviously are going to have a chance in this one. In fact, I think the Bills and their fan base feel like they can go to Houston and get the victory and head on to the next round, where they would take on, most likely it would be the Ravens, who they would take on in the next round. The divisional round, that is. That'd be something, right? I mean, we've already seen mayhem going into the playoffs with Kansas City winning, New England losing yesterday. Kansas City taking over the second seed. Man, this postseason is going to be fun, isn't it? NFC side, you have the Vikings and Saints going at it on Sunday, early afternoon game at 1:05. Then the NFL wildcard round on the NFC side. And the late afternoon game will be the Eagles hosting the Seahawks. Let's be honest. The NFC East division is garbage. The fact that they get to host a game is garbage. I get that that's how the system works, but the NFC East does not deserve to host a game. The Seahawks losing in a tight one, in which there was a whole bunch of drama at the end of that game, the 49ers and Seahawks game last night. But obviously you feel like the Seahawks are going to be the favorite going into that game. And how about Marshawn Lynch being back? Beast mode. Not only is he just a fun character to just listen to, he's fun to watch too. So we're going to see where these matchups, and it could be, you would think, the Seahawks possibly facing who we think could be the Packers, maybe. I don't know. That'd be a good matchup, wouldn't it, for the second round? Vikings and Saints, they're going on this weekend as well, as the Vikings have been struggling recently. In fact, somebody who I'm Facebook friends with said yesterday after the Vikings ended up losing, it's tough being a Vikings fan dealing with this. Basically a roller coaster ride every single week. Will the Vikings get to the promised land? Probably not. Because the NFC is just straight up, that are stacked this season. With the Saints, Seahawks, 49ers, Packers. All of those teams are great. In fact, the 49ers securing a number 1 seed. So actually it would be the Seahawks playing the 49ers again in the second round. Whereas it would be the Saints and or Vikings playing the Packers. Wouldn't that be something? You have if the Seahawks win, you'd have 2 NFC West teams playing at it. If the Vikings somehow beat the Saints, which I do not see that happening in the Dome, but that would just be interesting. You would have 2 NFC North teams playing with the Vikings and Packers. That would be interesting, but that's not going to happen because I think Drew Brees, the way he's playing right now, can anybody beat this Saints team? I don't think the Vikings have a chance, first of all, this weekend, Sunday. And honestly, unless the Packers pick up their production offensively early in the game, the Saints very well could go to Lambeau and dominate the Packers as well. I'm just saying. And now let's wrap up today's show talking about a game that everybody in the state on Saturday was discussing. You guessed it, Kentucky and Louisville over in Lexington at Rupp Arena. What a game, right? If you're a Cards fan, you were kind of worried there in the first half. Then your team outscores Kentucky 37-29. You take the game into overtime. And at that point, if you're a fan, you're already nervous about the situation, about having to go into overtime. But then when you get there, you're always like, will my team show up? Will they start dropping shots and win this game? And Kentucky scored 17 in the overtime period to Louisville's 9 and ultimately won 78-70. Number 19, Kentucky, who was 8-3. Fans were a little nervous about this team. I don't know if they were fully nervous yet, but they were a little nervous. Granted, as you would expect. I mean, I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on that ranking, and they start to see that number get bigger and bigger, and they become scared. You don't want to drop out of the top 25. But they avoided disaster and defeated what was then a 11-1 Louisville team by the score of 78-70. Louisville going into that game ranked 3rd in the country. Basketball, one of those sports where it's very easy for upsets to happen, in my opinion, compared to what you could have in college football, just because it's easier to recruit 5 strong dudes to start a game as it is to get 11. You know, just going back to basic math here. But Louisville regardless up until that point, and looked good. Kentucky, I think, makes a statement with this game. We see the potential from what I saw in one article say. We saw the potential of what this Kentucky team can be. And I think what many fans expect them to be. Even though I think we forget sometimes that, these are a bunch of first and second year players. We forget about that aspect a lot of the times and ignore the fact that some of these guys that we were watching on Saturday, just played high school basketball a year ago. So I think our expectations are kind of unrealistic at times, especially when it comes to the programs, Kentucky in particular. And then I saw Calipari was voted coach of the decade, I guess, because they've been doing that thing. So from 2010 to 2019, the coach of the decade, which he set the trend for what college basketball would eventually become with the way he recruits. And a lot of fans don't like the whole one and done deal, but he changed college basketball by himself, just the way that he was recruiting. You come play for me. Basically, you have one solid year. And then you get to go and set off into make millions of dollars playing in the NBA, who, by the way, right now financially is not doing bad. In fact, the NBA is just as popular, I think, now as they were back in the 90s. Some may argue it might be a little better as far as the pockets go for a lot of teams that maybe were not relevant back then. Yeah, obviously, because you have social media, you have more exposure now than ever. So yeah, it would make sense why the NBA is so much better off today. Just so much more exposure. So yeah, you could say that the NBA is better now than it was 20 years ago for sure. So you have a lot of these Kentucky players who go off to the next level, and you're constantly recycling here, trying to find the next big guy who can maybe take you to a championship. And so I think we saw it with Kentucky. I think Tyrese Maxey, he has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to carry this team. I feel like 27 points, 7 rebounds on Saturday, leading all scorers. I think he's the guy who wants to keep this team rolling. Nick Richards had 13 on Saturday. Emmanuel Quickly had 18 as Kentucky won 78-70. Scorers for Louisville, Stephen Enoch, had 18. Dwayne Sutton, 14 points, 10 rebounds, having a double-double on Saturday. Lamar Kimball had 12 points for the Cards. Jordan Nwora had 8, but it wasn't enough. That was just a good, solid performance from those two teams. You felt like they wanted to win it. Going into rivalry games, sometimes the players don't necessarily look at it as a rival. Just because, a lot of the players on these teams may not be sticking around. Louisville, the exception. They have players who have stuck around more often than not than Kentucky, obviously. But they go into these games looking at it as just another matchup. You felt like this was an actual rivalry, though, on Saturday. The game goes into overtime. Louisville comes back, puts it in overtime, scoring 37 second-half points. And then Kentucky said, it's our time to shine right now. Basically reversing roles on Louisville in the overtime period, outscoring Louisville by 8 points, 17-9, and ultimately taking the crown. So, Kentucky fans, you won on Saturday. Be happy. And we're going to see where these two teams moving forward, what happens in the rankings with Kentucky, first of all. Yes, they have 3 losses, but that's a big win over a top 5 team in Louisville. And so we'll see what the AP Top 25 looks like coming up next week. Well, that'll do it for Heartland Sports Live. I'm Trevor Rice. Give me a follow on social media at Radio Trevor Rice on Twitter. Also, like us on our ESPN Twitter page, ESPN Radio 1061. I'll be back next Monday, 5 until 6. Until then, enjoy the sports week and keep it locked here to 106.1 ESPN Radio.